Okay.
Who you are is absolute happiness. Always. It's just that energy, that contraction, this pulling feeling, which is seeking, that gives the impression of dissatisfaction, of uncomfortableness. But it's merely a thought and a contraction. I need more. And underneath that is perfect happiness. That which is watching is always happy with what is. Our nature is happiness. Our birthright, Ramesh used to say, is happiness. It's just the thoughts and the ideas that I need more, which gives the impression of this. I'm this separate self, and I don't want certain experiences and want other experiences. And this continuous repeating of the story of who you are, of what you need, what you want, what you've done, what's right, what's wrong, what's good, what's bad, the continuing talking in the mind, which gives, it also comes with an energy of, and it's that continuous yakkering also covers up the fact that nobody's there. There's nobody in this. There's just experiencing happening. The talking gives the impression that there's somebody existing in time and space. And it's irrelevant whether that person does exist or doesn't exist. We're just talking about happiness. And this constant talking creates a future, a past, relationships, how you can relate to others, what you need from others, what you want from others, how people have done bad things or good things to you in the past. And we live in that perpetual story. When you meet your friends, like, it's seen as a good thing to have lots of conversation about yourself. And when you meet your friends, it's talking about your story and then talking about their story, continuous chattering, which is a reflection of what's happening in the mind. When the mind's empty, there's very little to say. I don't mean empty as in no thoughts, I mean empty of that seeking, that one, that self. And here, on the spiritual path in Tirunamalai, rather than talking about the personal story, it's more about the seeking stories in the coffee shop. Which is a good teacher, which is a bad teacher, which one's helped you, which one hasn't. We don't know. The mind makes up all these stories about what's going on. Who they're going to go and see, what emotions they've released. And it's that continuous, repetitive story that's giving the impression and that pull that I am this body-mind. When it falls away, it's not that you go into consciousness, you were always that. It's just when it's removed, it's seen that you were always that. And there's always expansion. You could say, just to make it a bit more clear, although this isn't quite how it happens, that when that falls away, there's an expansion into consciousness. But that's not quite right, because you always were consciousness. You were always that expansion. It's just the little veil and thoughts and energies that give the impression that you weren't. And when it falls away, you see you're absolutely nothing, in which everything arises. You're no thing, but yet everything arises in that no-thingness. And it goes on for infinity. It's all there is. Does anybody have a tissue? I've got a leaky eye. I stroked the dogs for the first time today, then forgot, and then touched my eyes. Oopsie. Thanks. And then
when you're speaking to us, like, I hear like an edge of
almost like enthusiastic motivation coming out of you to
Yeah.
help us understand something.
Yeah.
For some reason in me, that seems to sit in a kind of opposing fashion to, if we really have no will, we couldn't do anything about the madness in the mind anyway.
Yeah.
How do they meet?
It's impossible to explain actually. I'll try, but because when you see yourself as a doer, everyone else you see, you will also see as a doer. And so you'll interpret me or you'll interpret others as doing something. But what's happening here and what's happening there, it's just here there's no longer the ideas and beliefs that I'm saying this. This is coming from absolute emptiness. The mouth's moving, the sounds are coming out.
So because that's just coming through you, can you see, I mean, when you look at a person, do you see them in the way when I look at a person, you see the same thing?
I see emptiness.
And are you speaking to that emptiness? Is the voice speaking to that emptiness or to the confusion? Or?
Well, I don't really have any intellectual concepts for it. It's just what's happening. I'm not thinking, oh, I'm speaking to emptiness, I'm not speaking to emptiness.
But because it sounds as if
Yeah.
there is a part somewhere in here that could, by the way that the message is coming through, that could make a choice, that could choose to do something different.
Yeah. It's weird, isn't it? This is what we were talking about kind of yesterday.
Me and Nikki are friends, and we went to see a guy the other week, and he said that while we're in this kind of normal state, then we're a mistake. We're just locked into all these compulsions, and we're not actually making any choices. It's just complete compulsive living, one after the other. And then he said that when you have the experience of the empty mind, then you can learn that you are the creator of self, and you can make choices from that.
No.
But before that, there's no choices.
I think this is what a guy was talking about the other week. He came and asked questions like this, like it's actually, from this perspective, it's not seen like that. And I now understand. Is he a teacher in theory?
No.
And because this other guy was saying that, he was like saying he was God and he could make these decisions in this new integration.
Like I was wondering, like what you said about your internet business the other week.
Yeah.
The idea arose,
Yeah.
and then the internet business came.
Yeah.
Could that, at some level, be a choice that you're actually able to make choices now?
No. And it's actually quite different from what he said. What the experience is here is it was seen that I was not the one choosing any of the thoughts or the actions. And then that one, it seemed like over a period of time, but it was never me that saw it, it was just seen, it was just exposed in the story of Lisa, that there was no one here. And then over a period of time, the seeking energy began to fall away. And then there was a bit of a boom at the end. And then there was like from here, the attention was out back in the world again. But there's still nobody here making choices. Choices arise, but it doesn't in any way feel like I make them, because I don't associate myself with thoughts and urges anymore. Although they arise in this, I'm that which is watching, the silent watcher which has no choice, makes no choice, it's empty.
And no choices could come not from thoughts, from someplace else.
Actually, choices are a combination of thoughts and energies, like impulses put into the body. Like sometimes you make a choice and it's just an urge coming from the body. Sometimes you just go to the shop and you've picked up the apple juice and you haven't even thought about anything. So it's a combination. Sometimes it's thoughts, sometimes it's bodily sensations, sometimes it's both. But they're not who I am. They happen in me. But it's not like they're not who I am as well, because they're happening in this. But there's no one in here making that choice. They're coming from nothing, from absolute emptiness. The emptiness which watches everything. And so now it's not like there's somebody in here who can choose. They just appear, the choices. But they're not separate from me either, but they're not mine. They come from absolute empty space. I didn't make them, but they appear in me. Does that make sense? It's a bit confusing. And so this guy the other day, when he was saying what he was saying to me, that now he can choose anything he wants, I didn't understand where he was coming from. Because it's not that I can choose anything I want. The choices just appear, but it's also not that there's separation from those choices. They're here, and the urges happen. But it couldn't have been any other way. There's nobody here that could choose anything else. It's like the same as the bird flying in the sky. I never chose it to do that, and that's exactly the same way in which the thoughts and the urges appear. And now the attention has shifted from being this separate self, which believed it was making all those choices and doing all those things, to just the watching of everything arising in it. So everything is me, but at the same time, there's no me in here choosing anything. It's just appearing.
It's very difficult to understand what would be the benefit, but like, does God still get excitement after knowing the whole story and just experiencing the sensations of it without the mystery of what's going to happen at the end? As it, anyway, it's just, boggles thoughts.
Yeah.
About why would it be enjoyable now?
Because, but I don't think God's like this isn't like a human who has whys and motive. This is an energetic force expressing itself. Or not even an energetic force, this is expression. It's like an artist painting, but it's not because when you imagine, when I say God or life or nothingness, you imagine it has a will like a human.
So, divine will, no?
You could say divine will or God's will, but it's not like you will look at that from a doership perspective as why he would want to express, or it would want to express in this way. And normally through looking and suffering, like in suffering and happiness, like what's the benefit, i.e. happiness being the good one and suffering not so good. But the empty watcher has no emotion or feeling or anything. That's what arises in it.
So God isn't a doer at all, just as we aren't doers. He has no preference, but there is
It has no preference, but yet everything's been created by God. But it's not that, when I say God's will, it sounds like it's mind, like a separate self. It's just an energetic force expressing itself, or an energy expressing itself because it can, but not for any reason or motive or desire, or for it to be a certain way. And when the self's removed out of that, when the idea that you're a separate self who can do and make life, this is seen as absolute love and divinity.
So the love that's often experienced by people who seem to plunge into the absolutes.
Yeah.
Why then love? Why not? Why love? Love seems like provocative emotion rather than a blank sheet. It's got it kind of paints a picture like everything's born out of God's heart for a longing to experience her, and there's an explosion of the heart and love and bliss ripple out.
Yeah.
Why love then? Why not hate? Why not destruction? people that's...
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. It is who you are is absolute love, but not the heart chakra sensation of love. Not that feeling of love. When people are talking about love, it sounds like they're talking about just this area of love. It's who you are is absolutely whole. And embraces everything. If you look at this empty space in the room, just imagine that the awareness changes from this awareness, looking from here, to the awareness going in the room. You can see the absolute intimacy of all this. Everything's kissing and hugging each other. It's all held so beautifully inside you. If you see yourself as this space, this watching that's happening, rather than it's beyond the separate self's idea of love. But love is a very confusing word because people think it's this. But it's
Do you want to ask another question?
Yeah.
So yesterday, I forget the line of questioning, but you mentioned something about Lauren having had glimpses or experiences, and talking about the forgetfulness of that afterwards. Yeah. Could you say something about that?
Yeah. This is what happens to a lot of people, is that they wake up and then they fall back to sleep for a period of time. So they wake up, so the veil, or if you look at it as a veil, like the separate self's like a veil, the veil falls down and then it pops back up for a while, the energy in it goes back up and down. What's actually happening with everybody here is the veil is going up and down. It's just there's not a seeing of this. It's just perceived as a good mood or a bad mood, or like when the veil's up, it's very up, then it's very much in doership, and it's just perceived as a bad mood. Whereas when you're looking at the world and there's love and there's beauty and there's enjoyment, the veil's down. And this becomes so obvious when you look at personal relationships. This became very obvious here. Was that some days my partner would do something and it would be so annoying. Other days he'd do exactly the same and there'd be very little reaction. And that's what people say, a good mood or a bad mood. It just means that the doership veil is less. But it's not all the way down, so it's not seeing really what's happening. It just is considered a good mood or a less of a good mood. But when you're generally happy and there's a flow and to life and there's less separation, it's not seen because, well, it's not being pointed out or whatever reason.
And if some of those experiences are like, so when I was 22, I had an experience where it felt like a wave of universal particles washed through me and the boundary of me was dissolved.
Yeah.
And there was infinite seeing and infinite depth, and there was like a furnace of love, exploding atoms everywhere. And it was as if God had scooped me up and put into the heart, and it was the source and the reason and the explosion of everything. And then there was just absorption. There was neither me nor the experience. It was just pure experience. And then instantly the separation, and then Gavin is here again, and it slowly smothered over the experience until it was gone. It couldn't be seen. So it certainly left me with the feeling that it was always there and available. Yes, something is veiling it.
Yeah.
But the relaxation, the trip that, I mean, in hindsight, looking back, it looked like I'd come out of a string of difficult relationships that were very tense. And that tension in that weekend was completely undone. And a relaxation happened there that I could never consciously. Now it feels in the aftermath. And it's happened these kind of experiences have happened a few times.
Yeah.
But the actual doing of that level of relaxation, I have no idea how to do that.
Yeah, and the seeker can't, because it's the falling away of the seeker. It really is. What happened in that weekend, and it's similar to what happened to Laurent. Laurent had no idea about spirituality, is that through circumstance of life, there was a giving up of the seeker of being checkmate or snookered, or it was like exhaustion of it. Something happens like that. And then the seeker is funny because it's funny, and I also understand how much discomfort that brings, because the seeker, the one that wants to get back to it, is perpetuating the seeking. It's a bit of a... And what happens with those experiences that you're talking about is that's a very dramatic experience. I don't live like you experience, like that experience, because you went from doership, full-on doership and suffering, to no suffering, but also everything falling away. Like you even lost the I amness of the body. Here there's still an I amness, like not the I amness of the body, but there's still an I amness. There's awareness and there's I amness. You lost the I amness, and you just went just to awareness with nothing, or with light, or whatever it decided to. Here now, what experienced is it's very natural. The attention and the energy is out in the space. It's not in here. But this body still walks around and acts and does. Like it doesn't walk into the poles. There's still a sense of coming from here, and there's an I amness. Like I am. And it's very natural what happens. It just doesn't go into I am Lisa, I have this, I want this, people need to be that way. That's fallen away. So in situations, it's just everything's falling through into this emptiness. There's not a constant jarring when there's all these concepts of I am Gavin, I want to understand spirituality. When you have these ideas, there's jarring. And this is what liberation is. When you have awakenings, this often confuses it. It doesn't confuse the mind, it gives the mind loads to seek for. Because what also happens when you have these awakenings is there's often a huge amount of love in the heart chakra. And you don't live in that heart chakra love feeling. That comes, and it comes here quite a lot, but that comes and goes. It's about no feeling, no emotion, no sensation. It's about the attention changing from being a personal self in here to the empty space. And in that, thoughts and emotions still arise, but you're no longer them. But when you have these awakenings, they're so dramatic, the mind then clings on, particularly to the love sensation. And then in spiritual seeking, seeks the love sensation, and it's going to go on forever, because that's not the end goal, that love sensation. It's the end of craving anything else than this. Then everything arising in everything arising in you rather than as you. So like, I am this body, I am Gavin, I had these experiences. Like, I could tell you the story, but there's no sense that's my story really anymore. Although it arises here, it's been chopped. And what happens in these awakening experiences is normally, for a lot of people, they happen, especially if you've never come to the subject before, they happen, and then there's a period of time of the seeking and the momentum of the mind coming back up again. And then that slowly over time, it seems for a lot of people, but not everyone, it just gets dissolved into emptiness.
And is there any, like, I mean, it's a completely otherworldly experience.
Yeah.
Like my eyes weren't working anymore. It was just, I didn't even know what it was.
Yeah.
But is there any, like, is there different layers of awakened experience where you get to experience different stuff? Like, you know, they talk about the bodhisattva bhumis.
Yeah. It seems that there can be for some people that awakening where there's still seeking going on, but it's kind of like the attention's not bound here, but there's still seeking and happening. There's still a suffering, an underlying suffering happening. There's not different levels. There's either seeking or not seeking, but however, for some people it can be that the veil and there's the veil's down here for a period of time, so there's just a little bit of seeking, but the attention's very expanded. However, here many different experiences happen, but when the seeking's fallen away, you don't care anymore, because seeking is the end of suffering. So experiences still carry on happening here of, like one day I was sat talking to my friend and my consciousness just kept disappearing, so the I amness kept disappearing, and then it would pop back, and there seemed to be no time that passed, because then she'd start talking and I'd be like, oh yes, I'm here talking to my friend, and it would disappear. Like, so these things still happen, but the end of suffering is the end of seeking, is the end of caring how it is, not craving these experiences. And that's all I'm talking about. Afterwards, experiences and different things can be seen. But here, what is talked about is the end of suffering, and that is the end of seeking. And it's irrelevant here what life shows me. I have no motive to find out why or who's watching or what's happening anymore. There's never the answer to the questions. It's just the end of the one that wants to question. The end of that momentum. I need to find this out and work this out. This life is odd and bizarre. It makes me laugh a lot because none of it really makes sense. And so these experiences may carry on, but it's irrelevant if there's no seeking there. It's just the same really as going and having a chai, because you don't want anything grander. It doesn't make any difference if the I am's here or not. Drinking your chai is just as divine as being an infinite light.
It's difficult to peel away that instinctive urge to do something.
Yeah.
All the extra stuff.
It is so strong, the doership. Do. Like your body's screaming at every moment. That contraction is happening in the body where it feels like this is the edge of your body, and it's maybe not so strong, like sometimes it gets less and more. It's all like the screaming pulses of doership, seeking. I have to get something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, oh yeah.
And sometimes it's worse and there's loads of discomfort, and the mind thinks, oh, it's because I haven't emotionally releasing. It's not because you haven't emotionally releasing. It's because there's a seeker there going, there's that seeking energy going, get, avoid. Every part of the body feels it. And when that falls away, the edge of your body disappears, because there's not that constant reminder or that illusion of somebody there. But that sounds confusing. The mind can take that, the edge of my body disappears. Woohoo! And that could be like such a dramatic experience. It's very natural. Like when I'm talking to you, I'm as much you as I am this. I don't even see this. In fact, what's seen there is more me now at the moment, except I can see this a little bit. But if I go like this, this is just requires a thought. When there's no thought there, there's just looking at you, because there's not the contraction into this.
It's hard to understand that. I'm locked into objects.
Yeah. Actually, you know this. You do know this. It's actually happening in the experience of everybody a lot. It's just that the seeker's coming back and claiming, and the attention's on the seeking and the seeker, and it forgets this. Because the way that memory works, do you remember being a child? This is amazing. I don't know how Lisa knows all this. Like this isn't coming from Lisa. Anyway, here we go. So you know when you were a child, do you remember like being 4 or 5 years old, and if your mum said to you, remember going to Bournemouth or on holiday last year, you'd be like, whoa, that was such a long time ago, and it felt like infinity. You could vaguely remember going to Bournemouth, or maybe not even, but it seemed like eons ago. And then as you got older, time seemed to speed up, and you could remember things very vividly. It's not that the memory gets better, it's that the seeker's continuously repeating the stories in the head.
Yeah.
The seeker, and it gives the impression of closer time and an impression of someone. So seeking, the seeker remembers seeking. So it's constantly repeating the story of who you are, what you need to get, what you want, what you don't like, what someone's done to you. And the memories seem really vivid. It's not that the memories got better, it's that constant mental activity over time, as you get older, is getting heavier and heavier and heavier. And the repeating is getting more and more and more. And so it seems like you remember last year better. It's not you remember last year better, it's that the story's gone through your head a million times. When you're 4 years old, you do an experience and then it's forgotten because you're just on to the next experience and you're not repeating it again and again. I remember like here in this story, this has got nothing to do with happiness, but what happened here, I was severely dyslexic as a child. I don't know if you know of dyslexia. And I was very slow and I couldn't grasp language. I used to have to go to speech therapy because I couldn't grasp language. I mean, time was just like, I remember people trying to explain time and I'd be like, just made no sense time here. And I remember the feelings. And I remember being 8 years old and suddenly getting time. And like most of my friends had got it like years ago, they'd perceived time, but I suddenly remember having this recognition of time. But I clearly remember living timelessly, like living without any sense of time. It just was what it was. And then I remember sitting there and going, oh, it was 1998. It was like February, I can't remember the date. And she'd written the time and the date on the board and I was like, oh, that's a year. And I remember like dum 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 working before. I had no concept of perception of time. I still hadn't learned to write then. Time came before writing. It took going to private school for me to begin to learn to write. It was very, very difficult. But you must, maybe you guys remember this or remember suddenly perceiving time.
No, it wasn't quite with time, a question about time, but I do wish not to live in time, actually. Because it's so stressful, but it's ridiculous. But it's more when you were talking just before about the seeker who wants something, and then you said people interpret it as emotional release.
Oh yeah. So what I meant by that was that the seeker then says, oh, it's because you've not emotionally released an emotion and that's why you feel this uncomfortable. The reason that there's always discomfort is because they're seeking, not because of letting go of emotions or different energies. It's that seeking which is uncomfortable.
Yes, and now I come to something I've been talking to every teacher about. I really want to nail down. And it's this, I have this seeking energy for a long time about finding the right home, right?
Yeah.
And finding the right country, the right home, the right community, and all this. And it's now so much up that I'm compulsively thinking about, shall I move there tomorrow? Shall I go there tomorrow? Shall I move into this flat? This flat will make me more happy. I will relax more there. It's just this ridiculous coming, and it's grasping me, and I think it's so real. So I'm like, I gotta have this.
Yeah.
So several times I've been in Tiro, I had breakdowns. Like I really I go back into some kind of trauma,
Yeah.
and 2 days ago I just fell apart, and there was fears and screaming coming up, and I was like, holy Moses. And the girls were so nice, I took some water on my feet and I lay down there, and I was like, I don't know where to go, and you don't have to go anywhere. So, oh, here's love, I can relax here.
Yeah.
But it didn't take long until I started to feel this coming back. This is going to end too. They're going to leave soon. This situation is going to pass. And this same whole thing is going to rise again.
Yeah.
So is this the seeker?
Yeah, this is the seeker. And then what's happening in there is there's a seeking energy. More than likely, I don't like to predict stories, and it might be completely wrong, but more than likely as a child, and stories are irrelevant in a way because there is no stories, but we'll just go into this just to explain the point. More than likely there was a sense of insecurity as a child, and so now there's a seeking to try and avoid that because you fear that experience again. So now you feel all this discomfort because you feel like you need to get this security.
Yes.
That's the seeking, the avoiding of every situation possible.
So what would
It's
be the
not about-
antidote?
It's not about releasing those emotions of insecurity or anything. It's about the end of the compulsive wanting to avoid that insecurity and make security.
So can I do that by my own will?
No, you really couldn't. Because
No.
you felt it the other day. You couldn't stop that coming back in, could you?
No.
You weren't the one that suddenly got rid of it. The thought came up, this is home. You never controlled that thought. The thought came up, there was relaxation.
Yeah.
And then the thoughts came back in, they're going to go, they're going to leave me, they're going to
Yes.
go. And there was agitation again.
Yes.
And you never ever did this your whole life. You never got anything wrong. It's just the way this story was written. And it's amazing because it gives the impression of somebody. You repetitively think about home,
Yes.
where to live, and it's
Yes.
always going around, and it gives an appearance of time and space and somebody doing something.
Yeah.
It's the most amazing illusion that life's created. And there's a somebody in the world having to find home. And home is here, always. But as a child, the misassociation, or somewhere along the road there was misassociation.
Yeah.
But there's nothing wrong with insecurity, because in a way this body is always vulnerable to death. That's that. It's just wanting to avoid that that's the discomfort.
Mm. Yeah. So what is there to do?
I know. This is the worst bit of the job. Because the one that wants to do it is the one that's the veil. Life does the liberation story, and this doesn't make sense to the mind. Life does its stories. And it doesn't, you really don't need to work it out. Like, there's so many great minds here. I know it just from talking to a couple of you. So you don't need to work out the liberation story. You don't need to emotionally release anything. It does it. If the urge is to come here, it will come. If the urge is to go to a teacher, it will go to the teacher. And then the mind will be like, yak, I'm doing that because it's going to help me, and it's going to do this for me, it's going to do that for me, and blah, 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 blah. It goes. But it's never that one that's controlling anything. The thoughts and the impulses appear from absolutely nowhere and fall back into absolutely nowhere. And still here, like, it would be easy to project that Lisa gets it all right now or something. Like, or that I experience pain. Everyone, life is pleasure and pain. I experience pain. I think I've infected my eye by touching the dog. I never touch dogs here. The thought this morning was like, just this once. Then the thought didn't come up, wash the hand, and then all morning I've been picking this eye. And that's that. And then the suffering would be like, you idiot, you shouldn't have done that. Now you're going to have an infection and da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. What happens if this? You can't control any of it. There's no one that can ever get this right or wrong. Life is always a series of pleasures and pain. And the suffering comes from that one that thinks it does it. Because that's awful. If you think you do this and life is a series of pleasure and pains, that's awful, because then you're always going to be trying to get the pleasures.
And get it right.
Yeah, and get it right. Choice is going to be almost impossible. Just picking a bun in the shop.
Yes.
Oh God, I've got to get the right choice. I need to have the right bun. You really don't need it. Happiness is who you are. It's not in the pleasures.
It's just hard to believe that there's no practice. Like
Yeah.
there's and in other examples this morning when I ate breakfast, I felt I have to know where I'm going after breakfast. No, you don't have to. I'm just sitting here. Because the doctors actually gave me the prescription now, a Siddha doctor here, Paul is called. You just sit 1 hour every morning with your tea, nothing, thinking, no meditation, no process, nothing. 1 hour. And it's like, it is so interesting. So it's like, that's my, from the doctor prescription, because I have so much vata, nervousness and stuff.
But there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying don't
No.
do that, what he's giving you, because it was never him giving it to you, and it was never you taking it on and doing it. Life wrote in for you to go to
suffering
him.
is to believe that I'm having these troubles, and more than just this is happening.
Yeah, and also that you are doing this practice. Life is written in now for you to sit there. It's written in the thought, I'm to sit here for an hour with my breakfast every morning. And it was never you taking on that practice or not taking on that practice. You ended up at this doctor. The doctor got an impulse to tell you to do this. And then now sitting with your breakfast happens. And I'm not saying don't do. I'm just saying that the one that thinks it's doing the liberation is a liar.
Yeah.
You didn't, and then the thought arose, come to Lisa, or maybe you're walking past and coming in happened. It was never ever you that did it.
No.
So there's nothing wrong if the urge comes up to go to certain teachers or read certain books. It was never you deciding to do it anyway. Never you. You could the seeker would never decide to come here, really.
Why?
Because this is the end of the seeker. The seeker will tell you, oh yes, here it's going to give me something better. And that's what the seeker will carry on yakking. If the seeker had choice, it wouldn't come to destroy itself. But the seeker doesn't have choice. It's just a yakkerer. I can see one bubbling there. Here it comes.
What?
Question. But this is a terrible thing. I've done this once before in satsang. We just need a 5-minute penny break.